Yesterday, I was on campus at the University of Florida. We had an amazing turnout, a record turnout, actually. I have been at the University of Florida multiple times. In fact, Ryan could probably go back into the archives. Back in 2019, visited the University of Florida, and we were getting screamed at, and we had protesters. It was not an easy campus visit. I mean, it was typical at the time, a lot of opposition, a lot of activist spark on the left. Andrew went to the University of Florida with me. I actually went with Donald Trump Jr. 2 or 3 weeks previous to that, and there were protests everywhere. Well, we returned yesterday to the University of Florida, and we were met with over 2,000 friendly supporters, 2,000 students that were in support of us. In fact, it was so overwhelming at the end, there almost was a creation of a tunnel where I had to walk through to be able to exit, people asking for selfies and for signatures. It was very similar to like a college football team entering a stadium. There were a couple liberals, one interaction in particular that will probably go viral, of a young man who was not dumb. He was very passionate, well-read, and I asked him, I said, are you guys willing to move on from this idea that men can compete in women's sports? I said, it's not popular. Can we just end the chapter on this? And he said, absolutely not. He said that trans men should be able to compete, and trans women should be able to compete in women's sports. He was so married to it. And for any of you that think the Democrats are going to adjust from the grassroots, it's not going to happen. Now, there might be a candidate that comes in and declares war on the base of the Democrat Party, but the base of the Democrat Party is more on board for this nonsense than ever before. The base of the Democrat Party thinks that there's nothing wrong with men stealing medals and awards from women. They have made a deal with the trans zealots of the base of their party, and they are married to it. But more broadly, the biggest takeaway is how the Democrat base has never had to deal with losing a culture war battle. They can't psychologically accept it. They've never had to do this in their existence. They are outnumbered now on campus. No, not necessarily outnumbered. I think if you took a poll on campus, these campuses are still probably 5 to 10 points to the left. But there's a passivity to the Democrat activism on campus. There is none. And there is energy and there is vitality behind any one of us that are Trump-supporting conservatives. Everything they can remember as far as being Democrats and leftists has always been a one-way ratchet. There were professors. It's very interesting. I'm getting more and more teachers and professors that are coming up and asking me questions, which of course I'm this is not just a student prove me wrong, anybody. There was a PhD professor of history, and one of those moments I wish that Blake would have been there. I wish Blake would have been there. This guy was a PhD of the interwar period between World War I and World War II. And look, I know a little bit about that. I know in the general population a fair amount, but a little bit compared to this guy he was like, well, Charlie, don't you see the similarities between the rise of Hitler and the rise of Donald Trump? I teach this professionally. I'm a PhD, and I think that everyone needs to know that the rise of Hitler and Donald Trump are very similar. It's such a sloppy, shallow analysis. It's total garbage. It's complete garbage. And this was his contention in front of the entire audience, him being the PhD. And Blake just made a great point in the chat, which is exactly right. I told him, I said, can you please get another reference point other than Nazi Germany? So Blake and I are on the same page. I said, can you read about any other country at any other time? There's a lot of other things that happen in history other than the evils of the 1930s and the 1940s. And he's just so focused on this, saying, nope, most important thing ever, Donald Trump's rise is very similar to the rise of Hitler. What is so important, everybody, is that we are living through a potential generational realignment. that could become permanent. James Carville wrote a piece. If you guys can pull up this piece, I think it's very important. James Carville wrote a piece giving his recommendations for the Democrat Party. James Carville said, listen, we as Democrats don't have a leader. We don't have the energy on the ground. He suggested and recommended that Democrats roll over and play dead. That was James Carville's recommendation. Roll over and play dead. And that is a very dangerous and unusual political strategy. He said, quote, we need a strategic political retreat. A strategic political retreat. And I can tell you, in modern digital political warfare, I don't think that's going to work for them. Again, I could be wrong, because every day we are winning over new converts. Every day we are winning over new young fans. And there is no sizable, well-funded opposition. And it really makes you wonder that once you stop the funding at USAID, all of a sudden these campuses simmer down a little bit. Now, I know I might be going a little too far in that direction, but it really makes you think, how much of a racket of a money flow was USAID towards the pressure campaign of the left? James Carville is basically saying this: stop it all. Wait and hope Trump screws up. But so far, Trump's strategy has been popular, and I think we're in a brave new era. I think we're in a completely new chapter. The digital online chapter where news is moving with such high velocity. We are reaching new demographics and new audiences. James Carville says, quote, the best thing Democrats can do at this moment: roll over and play dead. Allow the Republicans to crumble beneath their own weight and make the American people miss us. Only until the Trump administration has spiraled into the low 40s or 30s in public approval should we make like a pack of hyenas and go for the jugular. Until then, I'm calling for a strategic political retreat. It's very, very risky, Mr. Carville, because what if we're actually increasing our ranks? And by the way, it's not just funding USAID. It's cuts to NIH, NSF, and the ban on DEI at colleges. Do you guys know when you get an NIH grant? Let me take the University of Pennsylvania, for example. The University of Pennsylvania will do a lot of NIH research, and they'll apply for these grants. Do you know that they are able to mark up on top of the grant 10, 25, 40% for overhead? Donald Trump signed an executive order capping what is called a supplementation. It's a supplementation adage to any NIH grant to only be 10%. If that ends up being held up in court, which of course it should be, the University of Pennsylvania will lose $270 million a year. Let me say that again. The University of Pennsylvania will lose $270 million a year if they only get 10% for supplementation. That's just one school. That is a singular school, everybody. $270 million a year. These universities are now sending out panicked emails. We got an internal email from an Ivy League school notifying everyone that at their conference are brown bag lunches now. No more free taxpayer lunches, literally. James Carville says for the Democrats, stay put, don't do anything, roll over, play dead. While we at Turning Point USA and Turning Point Action are embarking on the most aggressive evangelism campaign, for a lack of a better term, conversion campaign, persuasion campaign, and it's working. And obviously I want the Democrats to fail, not succeed, but they're going all in that we are going to fumble. But we have our foot on the gas. We are ascendant, and we are multiplying our numbers on a daily basis.